welcome to Middleware Friday, episode 53, February 16th, 2018, Azure Serverless Application Platform. So in this episode, I'd like to talk a little bit more about the serverless capability in Azure, and this specifically is the Azure Serverless Application Platform. And I'll talk in this episode what that actually means. And there's also some community content around some of the capabilities inside that platform, which are Azure Functions, Logic Apps, and Event Grid. So if you look at this picture, you see that we're moving from IaaS more to PaaS. So, everything around these days, and the trend is that developer productivity and time to market and speed of innovation and differentiation against, some of the competitors in this market is really important. And this will lead that companies are more and more investing in PaaS instead of, the IaaS. So we're more moving towards PaaS in terms of cloud adoption. And this is really what's in the market. This digital transformation, I know it's kind of a buzzword, but it does have a change and impact. Since 2000, 52% of the Fortune 500 are gone just due to, this digital type of disruption. So companies kind of have to focus more on the different ways. And if you look at the digital strategies, across a certain area. So it's more around empower employees, optimize operations, transform, your products. So the different type of offerings you're going to provide, and engage more your customers. So, another one of those buzzwords is like the age of the customer. And especially good, what you could see, for instance, is Uber or Airbnb, who really changed through that digital world. While the taxi business or hotels and stuff, that used to be an isolated type of market, which is now completely open up because of the digitalization. So what's serverless? Now, if you haven't heard this term, or what you think actually what it would mean, if you haven't watched Middleware Friday before, a little recap is kind of abstraction of services. Not that the services are gone, it's just that it's more abstracted away in its platform services. So that's one thing. There's still infrastructure there, but you don't have to manage it anymore. That's done by Microsoft, in this case, when you talk about Microsoft Azure. It's more about event-driven and instant scaling. So if you need more, if you want to consume more, then you can use more because that's under the cover provided for you. And it's also consumption billings, as pay as you go. It's more commoditized, similar to if you look at a socket inside your wall where you can draw the power out, you only pay what you use. So that's kind of the type of commodity that platform as a service does. For instance, if you look at IaaS more, then it's similar to what a hotel is. If you reserve a room and you have to kind of occupy, if you don't occupy it, you still have to pay, right? And with commodity like power, it's just you plug in and you pay what you use. And this is kind of similar for the serverless paradigm. With all these services, you just pay what you use. So, and then you can look at this serverless application platform. So you see functions, logic apps, and event grid. So that means you can do compute, you can do flows, and you can do eventing. So you can run code inside Windows Azure without setting up any type of server. You can set up a flow, so you can trigger something and then it will have multiple actions. Or you can set up Event Grid, which is one of the latest services which went GA at the end of January, where you can set up more in a push-push type of model instead of you have to pull certain stuff and things. And with that platform, these three, if you have them in a sort of orchestration type of thing, as in, working together, you can have them working together with some of the other platform services, whether it be databases, SQL or NoSQL with the Cosmos DB, multi-API, multi-model, something that's been showcased also in Middleware Friday, whether it be interacting with storage. You can set up security and access control about these capabilities. It's suitable in IoT and analytics scenarios, and you can even build some type of smart solution as well using that service platform. And you can either build your solutions through Visual Studio or Visual Code, or you could use the browser. So it has different experiences how you can set up your solutions, but you can be pretty productive with them. Looking at that, so a little recap. So what functions are, you just run some code in the cloud, and you can develop functions in multiple languages, including Java, which was enabled to do so with functions somewhere at the end of I think November, when Microsoft is also supporting this. On the other hand, if you look at Lambda services, for instance, that are offered by AWS, they support .NET on their turn. So recently they also adopted .NET Core 2.0. You can expose these functions easily as API endpoints, and they scale based on what you do. So you can have a consumption plan under the covers for it, and they easily integrate with some of the other services like Logic Apps. If you have larger workloads, then durable functions can be a good option as well, instead of running them, for instance, through a Logic app, or you can chain certain functions together using durable functions. Then you have this notion of Logic Apps. So Logic Apps in the second year of maturity, so it's still growing in features and capabilities. If you've seen some of the previous Middleware Friday shows, you've seen that there's quite a few interesting features that have been added onto it. So you like the JSON for JSON mapping, or the way you can do batching. And you can create these Logic Apps very simple by provisioning a template in the browser and then just put a trigger and a certain chain of actions to it. So this also, again, is a service that's very trigger based or eventing based. And you can even have a hybrid scenario where you can have Logic Apps talking to your on-premise systems using the data gateway, and then talking, for instance, through BizDoc server on your on-premise systems. And on the other end, Logic Apps is really about connectivity. So it offers tons and tons and tons of connectors, some standard ones, some enterprise one, even connecting to, for instance, SAP. And if there's a connector not there for you, they have extended the capability of Logic App, but also enabling you to build your own custom connector. And then there's the Event Grid, which is one of the latest services. So it's a centrally managed intelligent routing type of capability within Azure, where you have events publishers, which can be multiple sources, services within the Azure platform, or you can even send out custom events. They're pushed out to a topic where, based on certain rules, so pre and post fix type of rules, which I'll show you later on, enable you to have multiple event handlers. There's some considerations when you're looking at this platform overall. If you want to orchestrate a type of solution where you want to bring in Event Grid, Logic Apps, and functions, is that you have to think about, in your design. So think about security, what type of workload, what type of requirements you want to meet towards the business, and maybe depending on personas as well, looking at your design. Who's going to use it? Is it more the business, or is it more an IT thing? If it's more business type of flow, where you want to give maybe your control more to the end users itself, then flow could be a better option to do so. But if it's more transactional type, where you want to have a little bit more control, then Logic App is a good choice. Then, of course, you also have to look at deployment, continuous integration, and deployment using ARM templates, using Visual Studio Team Systems Online, and also think about automated tested as well. Testing, what I mean. And then there's support monitoring, a monitoring process, how you're going to own and monitor this, and what type of SLAs you want to put on your solution. Now, pricing is very important. So I'm going to focus a little bit more in this episode about pricing. You have your workload, and then what are the prices. So here you see functions, Logic Apps, and Event Grid. So this application platform, you can see here. Now, all have a consumption plan, with the difference that Azure Functions can also be put on an app service plan, meaning that you can reserve a little bit more resources in Azure. So that's a little bit more IS type of thing, because you do have to specify what type of resource you're going to use, and you will have to pay for them upfront, kind of thing. So it's not consumption based, but you can do this. And this could be possible if you're expecting certain workloads at certain moments, or you want to share resources within that app service plan over multiple other solutions as well. There's a unit or price and unit of measure. So with functions, it's execution time based on the memory and compute you're going to use. So that's why it's in gigabytes per second. And you pay per execution. So it's about 0.96 euro cent or euro per million execution. So there's also a list of free grant of 400,000 gigabytes per second. I'll explain this a little bit later on, all these services in conjunction with a certain type of solution. With Logic Apps, you just pay per action, whether it's trigger action or action itself. and then whether or not you're using a standard or an enterprise connector. An enterprise connector, for instance, is SAP. And with Event Grid, you pay per operation. So per million operations, you pay 0.5, so like €0.50. And you have a free usage or grant of 100,000 operations. Now, if you look at the availability, Functions is available in most of the regions except for Azure Germany, Korea, the Azure government, India West, UK West, and Central West US. So those are kind of where you cannot find functions. With Logic Apps, it's most of the regions except for Germany, Korea, and the Azure government. And when you look at Event Grid, which is just G8, there are around 10 regions now, so mostly in the United States, Europe, and Asia Pacific. And if you want to drill down into pricings and when you want to frequently ask questions, then you can follow either the pricing details of the functions, the Logic Apps, or Event Grid. Very interesting to look into those details if you want. Now, what type of scenarios can you support using that serverless application platform? So, and you've maybe seen this in one of the previous episodes, you can through Flow submit a parking receipt to expensive. It will end up in Azure Blob Storage. We will raise an event as blob created, which will go through an event grid topic. So it's pushed to that one. Then it's pushed to one of the handlers, which is a function which can then on its turn call computer vision API to do the optical character recognition type of capability. Use that and then output that, for instance, to a service bus queue. But this is a type of a little bit of a solution you could use leveraging some of that serverless application platform capability. Now, another one would be more type of business scenario. Let's say you're providing a service where you are offering online photo books or something like that, and you want to resize certain images. Then you can upload pictures, which could end up in a blob storage again, which would subsequently raise an event, which could then be handled by a function, which would, let's say, crop the image or make thumbnails out of it. And for that, I have kind of a demo. So let's say I upload a picture of a dog and I want to have a thumbnail out of it. So what I'm going to do is just mimic that there's a front end that will result to the fact that it will upload pictures to my blob storage. So let's have a look where we can find those pictures. I've put them in this folder. So I'll upload that one. And then I will upload another one. Which is a picture of a few of us running in a BizTalk 360 shirt. Okay, so I have these two pictures. There's somebody uploaded, results into a blob created event, which will subsequently be sent to that function in the end who will handle it. And if I'm correct, I will have two thumbnails right here. So here are the smaller pictures. This is what happens. So I can easily upload thousands and thousands of pictures and have them resized in certain formats. So let's look at the event grid. That's in the middle. So you see here that there's a Logic app that subscribes to the events, but only when a blob is being deleted. So let's say, for instance, a blob is deleted. Someone removes a blob from the images container. There's another one, which is the function that subscribes to the blob creation events, because those are the events that lead to the fact that an image is going to be resized. And there's another one, just a raw event trace. So let's have a look at that raw event trace first. So here you can see, and this is interesting because this request bin kind of subscribes to all the events. So you can see here's the one that's the put blob, that's the image store account where you can find one of the images. So here you see that BizTalk 360 run picture. And if I go up a bit, the other event is that another blob is being created in another blob storage, which is the container thumbs. So since in the request bin, you can set that up as a webhook mechanism, and then this one subscribes to all the events.
just to give you a little bit. And if you've seen previous episodes of or Middleware Friday, then you've already seen some of the event grid capability. Now this is the function. So the function, and this is interesting now that the event grid has become GA, is that you can also create a function out of the box, or one of the templates in C#, which responds to a event grid. So that's an event grid trigger, and you can create a function around it. So this is a very simple function. It will just extract that URL out of the event. So if I just go back to request bin one more time, what I mean is this: you see that URL right here, which is image store account blob core Windows net images. So that's the picture, and that's being picked up, and then it's downloaded, and it will resize it to the instructions right here, the instructions to resize the blob image, and it will create a new blob image in the FUMS container. If you look at monitor, just to give you a bit of a look how that would look, is here you can also see the event coming in, and then it's being processed as such. What I also can do, since I have that other subscriber as well, is deleting the image. So it's gone. Again, you would note, you will see this also in the event grid. But this is being pushed to the event grid, and eventually you would also see this in the request bin, as you can see here, deleted blob. Now what I've done is that in case that would happen, I can use a Logic App. And the Logic App specifically subscribes to the blob deleted event in those containers, which would lead to the fact that I will be notified that this is gone. Now, I don't want to run all the events for Logic App. I somehow can accumulate a lot of cost, and that's not necessary, but I could use or leverage Logic Apps pretty well to notify that something has been deleted, which I don't expect to happen, but it could. And ultimately, I get an email which tells me that one of the pictures has been deleted. So that was a little bit of a demo of very small resizing of images. So for instance, a business wants to offer online photo books and wants to offer all kinds of image resizing. And then, it could create all types of code, or it just could create a bunch of functions that could do that for them. And that's very low cost. Because if you look at the cost, that's particularly one I want to look at. Let's say we'll look at a workload of 1 million pictures per month. That would in the event grid lead to 1 million published events, delivery attempts 1 million, events matching. So because there is a matching pattern based on the fact that I have to look in the container and the JPEG. Then there's a monthly grant of 100,000 operations. So if you combine all of this, so the published events, delivery attempts, event match, those are all operations. And there's a free grant of 100,000 that leads to 2.9 million operations times the 0.56 per million operations. So that would be €1.50 per month. The Azure Functions will be like, okay, I got 1 million executions. They are around 1 second. So the resource consumption would be 1 million seconds. And then based on the memory, I would calculate the following, that the total amount of gigabytes per second, so that the resource consumption would be 500,000. My grant is 400,000, leaves me that I have to pay for 100,000 gigabytes per second. And the resource consumption price is very low, so that monthly monthly cost would be around 1.4. So that's 2.5 euros so far. And then if I look further down the total cost of ownership for the Azure storage, it would be, as you can see here, 0.0166 per gigabyte. Then there's Logic Apps. Let's say 1% of the images somehow get deleted or are not necessary. That would lead to 10,000 notifications. And as you can see here, the action price and the standard connector, because I have a request that's the trigger action versus, I use that standard connector. So if I calculate it correctly, I would end up paying 1.28 euro per month. So if I build all the costs all together and just an assumption, and this is a little bit of a calculation and assuming certain functions, but it's important that you look at your workload and look at the pricing as well to give also the customer you work for a little bit of a sense what the cost of ownership would be if you build this type of solution, at least this part of maybe an overall solution. And then the cost would be around €6. So in the end, what are the challenges if you look at building solutions leveraging the Azure Serverless application platform? Again, and that's why I point this out, it's the workloads and the pricing. And that's why I really made an emphasis in and tried to do a preset assuming calculation of a certain workload. But that's not all of it. The other thing you have to think about is support. Think about regulations, maybe even the GDPR, the privacy law, which are happening now in Europe. Could end up you have to redesign or think about your solution in general. And then of course also the security. So maybe even the cost of ownership and even building your solution might be small. There's also other things you have to think about when you build a solution. So the serverless might think, okay, I pay what I use, it out of scales, I get a lot of out of the box capability, but there's also other things that could impact your costs, whether it be the workloads or regulation, security and such. And there's another thing which is around maturity. So a lot of these services now are GA, but some of the capabilities, maybe a connector, are still in preview. For instance, the Azure Resource Manager, a connector in Logic App, is still in preview. So if you want to leverage some of those connectors, then yeah, it might not always work as expected. And then there's integration with other cloud services you have to think about, which sometimes cannot be or are not in GA mode yet. So think about that too when you're designing your solution. And then there's another thing like enterprise features. For instance, if you look at Logic Apps, there's not a capability of using business rules yet, or in general, some more advanced type of dashboarding. So all in all, those could be kind of the challenges you could face if you try to build up your solution. Now there's some community content. So I'll look some stuff up with regards to the serverless application platform, and I've looked at Functions, Logic App, Event Grid, which kind of build up this serverless application platform. So for Functions, you see here two very interesting resources. You can look in with regards to functions in general. You can look at Logic App. So there's some MVPs that are doing some great work there. They blog a lot around Logic Apps, which are Toon van Hout and Matthias Lokberg. And the recent launched Event Grid, which is now in GA, there's a few people that wrote blogs around it, and also a very interesting MSDN article which was released very recently by David Barkle, talking about event driven architecture with regards to Event Grid. So that's a very interesting another resource as well. So there's a lot of traction in the community around this service platform, and I'm just putting some stuff out here which I find in the community. With people I know personally or have met or somehow I've found on the internet are really committed to these serverless applications. But there's more. There's a ton of good stuff coming out from Microsoft. Jeff Holland usually does a good set of feature demos, around Functions, Logic Apps. So that's good. There's service conferences which are around Functions as well. So there's a lot of stuff happening around serverless as it gets more and more momentum. So if there's feedback around Middleware Friday, please keep them coming through Twitter or through the email. And the other thing I like to point out is that there's a global integration bootcamp. So we're about a couple of weeks away from it. So registration, certain sites are open. I myself will be speaking in London on the 24th, talking about intelligent apps. There's some labs built around them as well. So that's what I'm going to do. And a few weeks before that, actually, I'm going to run the 4th marathon, not the furthest, can't point out, but the 4th marathon in Japan. But you'll hear that more about in the next episode. So I want to say thank you for watching again, and also like to thank Bisto360 again for being a great host. So it's really good. And thanks for watching, and I'll leave you with the music credits.